Hi, I'm Pete Peterson, and I'm chairing the Ethics and Elections Committee meeting today. It's Wednesday, July 27th of 2022. And I guess we'll do some introductions. I'm the chair, Pete Peterson, and
Christopher Constant.
Those on the phone, Miss Allard.
Jamie Allard, I'm here.
Miss LaFrance.
Suzanne LaFrance, I'm here.
And Miss Quinn Davidson.
I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, fantastic. The gang's all here. So I guess we'll go to new business. And the first item of new business is the update on the special municipal election. And so you have information for us, Ms. Hines?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I gave an overview of the election at the meeting of certification on July 12th, pointing out that we had pretty low turnout, 12.4% for the District 1 seat. I wanted to also take a minute to point out in the report of canvass that the Election Commission provided and signed. They made an effort to make note in their report that they noted that with two concurrent elections that there was likely some voter confusion. But when I explained what I had done to try to get the word out about the election happening, they recognized that we did a good job providing the information to voters and taking action to reduce confusion. And so I just really appreciated that and wanted to point that out. And then also I provided the assembly memorandum that we provided to the assembly at the time, and also wanted to point out some rejection rates over the past couple of years. We know that certification on the day of a regular meeting is a little bit difficult and maybe chaotic, but I think you can see over the past couple of years the rejection rates have gone down quite a bit with that effort. So, and I also compared it to the state of Alaska special primary. They have no cure process, and so just showing the difference in the cure, what a benefit the cure process is, and how that we're continuing to improve that, I think is important to highlight.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to point out, Ms. Hines has a little asterisk here under the other category for the special election at the bottom. And interestingly, that number is a little bit higher, or actually statistically higher than the previous rates. But because the special election was so close in time to the regular election, there were a lot more people. We had 17 rejected ballots from the regular election. And we always count those if they're received before the public session of canvass. But we just wanted to let you know that that's really an anomaly, and that I think these numbers, the rejection percentage is really, really good, and it demonstrates, as Jamie said, that the cure process is working.
Well, I just think that, more often the voters are voting by mail, they're perfecting it. They're getting a little better. They've got the process. Many of them have figured out at this point, and I've spoken to a number of them that are just absolutely thrilled with vote by mail. Think it's the best thing they've done, and I think everything would even get better if the state would go to vote by mail, so that everyone could get used to doing it the same way all the time. But unfortunately, we are not in a position to make that decision. Someone else has to make that decision at the state level. So, fantastic. Any questions from the members of the committee about the update we just received from the special election? Not hearing from anyone. I guess we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, comments of the State of Alaska Division of Elections regarding adoption of emergency regulations on precinct boundary maps. And so we've got this packet with all the precincts and the new lines. Is that what this is?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first several pages are actually our districts, and our staff person, Liz Edwards, compared PDFs and did the best she could. We didn't have any GIS data from the state, and so we couldn't compare GIS data to GIS data with the lines. So she did the best she could to just draw some somewhat arbitrary lines as to what it looked like the state was doing with their precincts. So you can see in the first couple of pages with the colored lines where there are going to be several split precincts created by our district lines in the beginning. And while I don't think that we have the ability to ask the state to change their precincts to match our district lines, what we did want to be sure that they did was make sure that their precinct lines weren't crossing any parcel lines. And also, if you'll go through the maps, you'll notice that they're using the same term for multiple precincts, where in the past they've often used neighborhood names. So, like now we have downtown Anchorage numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are 7 precincts in the North Anchorage area, whereas it maybe used to be downtown Anchorage 1, 2, and 3, and then we had Fairview and Merrillfield and that. And so what the letter that I've provided is asking your support for me to write a letter to the Division of Elections, and our comments would just be basically to ensure that parcel lines are not divided by a precinct boundary, and secondly that we go back to the convention using neighborhood names, mostly to make it easier for us in the elections team to create the databases. We know what area of town we're talking about. We know what area of town maybe some of our LRSAs are in, and so it's not a big general downtown, which is all of North Anchorage, but we know we kind of can do a better job at pinpointing in our head where we are to ensure that we're doing things accurately because we know historically. So that's the letter that I've provided, and I'm happy to go through it a little bit more in depth.
Ms. Jones?
Jamie, could you do each part, so go through the map page by page and say what page 1 means, and then get us to, if you could get us to those pages, and then stop and we can ask questions about that, and then maybe we can go to the neighborhood question.
And we've been joined by Member Boland, and he's not officially a member of the committee, but he's certainly welcome. Continue.
Okay. Mr. Boland would like, there's a few extra packets here. So in the big packet of maps, page 1 shows downtown district number 1, and you can see where assembly district number 1 crosses district 4.
Not sure who's on the phone. Maybe it's Dean. You're not muted.
Thank you.
Sorry, Pete.
District 1, okay, so the precinct that is now 5 520, 515, that used to be 2 precincts, it is now 1. It is the entire purple square that Liz created, and then you can see dotted lines for District 4 and District 5. So that new precinct is District 1, District 4, and District 5. That one precinct contains pieces of District 1, 4, and 5. Similarly, former precincts 335 and 320 are now combined into one precinct. It crosses, I believe it's District 1 and District 2, and then 305 also has a little portion of District 1 in it, and I believe it's District 2 that's out to the right there. So those 3 precincts are now split precincts because our district lines divide them, those precincts.
Is that paperwork, I apologize for interrupting, is that paperwork in the email that you sent out to us, Jamie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The District 2 map is on the second page. It is a little tiny corner, and it looks like it might be easier to actually just look at the District 5 map, so I'll address that one when we get to the District 5 map.
Okay.
The third page is Assembly District 3 map. Former precincts 755 are now being combined with former precinct 640, and our district line is crossing that precinct. Former precinct 715 is, it looks like, to stay that same size. There's a little tiny area that goes out, it looks like it must be West Platte, that goes outside of the district line. 770 and 720 are combined into one precinct, and it is divided by the district line. And the same with precinct 705. There's a tiny little sliver inside of District 5, and the majority of it is outside of District 5. So those are more split precincts that we will have by our district maps.
Any questions from members so far?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, I don't know if it's a question or it is kind of a question, but we have some remainder in the contract, I think. I don't know if it's still available with the folks at RDI who did the reapportionment process with us. And if we could do a small contract, I would love to conduct some analysis. We might recompose that reapportionment committee, the discussion with the body, to see where the people are in these districts from a population perspective, to see if we might come up with a path to eliminate a number of these split precincts. And so in the last reapportionment process, we did that. We came up with only one instead of the several that it started with. And so just from a practical perspective, I want us to be thinking not just about that this is what it is and what it's going to be, but this is what it is now, and we might take action to slightly adjust some items in a timeline that gets us well in advance of the next election process.
Okay. Well, since we actually have gone to vote by mail here in Anchorage, the precincts lines are actually less important than they used to be for our elections.
So some would say that, and there's a rational argument for that, and others would say information is value to who is where and how they're voting, sure, and in fine detail as close to the neighborhood level as we can. And that's for a number of reasons. So I see Barbara.
Ms. Jones?
Through the chair, keep in mind this year we had 188 ballot styles. So for every one of these splits, you add one more ballot style. So, I mean, on the first page, you're adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because for, instead of having one ballot style for 335, you're going to have 335 in District 1 and 335 in District 2. Or 305, it'll be 305 in District. So that's 4 instead of 2. And then so that's a problem. The more ballot styles you have, the more complicated our election becomes, and the higher the likelihood of displaying a voter's vote. So if you look over on the next map, well, it would be on the, I think it would be on the 3rd page, where 715 does that little bitty dip on West Platte that Jamie was talking about, and also 705 where it does that little dip up to the top. So on the problem is, if there is one voter in that area, that voter has one ballot style. So when you do the statements of votes cast, you're potentially displaying that voter's vote. Even if it's 2 voters and it's one household, you're displaying their votes.
And I would add, Mr. Chair, going back to the front page, if you look at the upper right-hand quadrant there, 335, 320, 305 in District 2, 305 in District 1, it may turn out mathematically that if we just get in and look, you could take the section 320 that's in District 2 and draw that into District 1, and take the section of 305 that's in District 1 and draw that into District 2. And with a very simple line change, the math might be there within deviations to achieve harmony and reduce the potential risk and to make sure that the data is accurate. So I just want to add into the conversation right now that while these are what they are, it might be worthy for us to look more closely at the deviations in numbers and populations and see if there's a way to harmonize these numbers with the lines that the state's given us.
Well, and we should go ahead and check then to see if there's still some funding that has not been used in that contract, so that we can.
So the contract is done, but we didn't spend we spent about half of it, maybe a little bit more. So the process going forward would be much simpler. So I would argue, once we look closely, the numbers, the funding will be there, unless we have otherwise appropriated, but I don't think we.
Pete, this is Jamie. I don't have your cell number to go in queued. Is there somebody I should text to do that?
Oh, that's okay. You have the floor.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I would disagree with Mr. Constant. We've already done the reapportionment, and now we're, in my opinion, I think we need to talk to legal about it. It sounds a lot like gerrymandering, and I'm not for that at all, and nobody else should be, but I understand his thought process. I don't know his motivation. I'm not speaking to that, but I think moving precinct lines to benefit or not benefit different communities after reapportionments have already been done is something we really need to discuss with Department of Law before we decide on changing something. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. And I just would add that historically this has been done. It's not a new thing. And you can look back at the record, and it's just what did we call it last night? A conforming amendment. And so it has nothing to do with motivations about who's where or what. It has everything to do with getting the final lines drawn in the most simple manner possible to achieve safe and free elections.
And we've been talking about trying to figure out a way to reduce the number of ballots we have to print for as long as I've been on this committee, which is over 8 years at this point. And Mr. Gates, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. Related to this question, but can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Oh, good. Yes, I would wonder, it's true that when we did reapportionment in 2012, at that time we had a resolution directing that we should try to make district boundaries that we adjusted to stay along, and that's split precincts. And in since then in 2016, 2017, shifting to vote by mail. That was not as important then with the vote by mail system that we have in place now. And we're actually taking vote precinct out of Chapter 28. And I think that there may be different, benefits of having assembly district boundaries that don't split precincts. But there's also different benefit for having assembly district boundaries that follow our taxing districts or service area boundaries. And the benefit of the latter that I mentioned is it would reduce the number of ballot styles that we have to produce. And of course, Ms. Jones, Ms. Hines, correct me if I'm wrong here, but so I wonder what is the benefit at this point in vote by mail of the data that we would have or information we would have by not splitting precinct boundaries. We're not really clear what the benefit is to the municipality or to the assembly as a body of going that route of adjusting boundaries to align to precincts. I think that's important for us to understand before we sort of cut about going forward with trying to reapportion again to adjust to not split so many precincts as opposed to leaving them as is or adjusting to align with service area boundaries to reduce ballot styles. So I'm kind of clear on that, but what's the benefit of the data or information we get from not splitting precincts when we have a vote by mail system in place?
I would answer with a question. What's the value of having a number of ballots returned and participation rates? It's information that's important for us to understand the mechanisms of our elections, how our work is done, and what areas it's done. I think there are probably a number of other reasons, but I don't think this is necessarily the place to have that discussion. I think I just wanted to put on the table that is a discussion that has been going on between myself and folks in elections.
Okay, Ms. Jones?
I think one other issue that helps us and encourages us to make the precinct lines and the assembly district lines match as much as possible and not create split precincts for the municipality is, remember, if you're a voter and you're voting in the municipality's election, your ballot is coming by mail. So you don't care what precinct you're in. It's on your ballot, but you might not care. However, if you're voting in a state election and you're not voting absentee by mail, you're going to have to go to your polling location. So for some of these voters, for example, we were talking about someone who lived in, I'm going to go back to 770 on page 3, and you live in 770, and you know you're in Midtown, your polling location could be in what was 720, and you could be then voting in West Anchorage. And I think that could be confusing to voters. As Jamie said, the precinct names they're trying to go by neighborhood. And if you live in Midtown and your precinct name is West Anchorage 5, you're going to be very confused by that. So again, these are voter-driven reasons. We don't want to expose voters' votes. We don't want voters to be confused with the precinct locations or the precinct names. And we want to reduce the number of ballots, as you said. So for all of these reasons, I think this is a good idea to continue to explore options with respect to these split precincts.
Okay. Well, yeah, then I think that...
Could I ask, with aligning our assembly district boundaries, state boundaries, could it have an effect of reducing the number of ballot sites?
The clerk already said yes. In one example, just the front page of the packet that we have, that alignment creates 5 new ballots. And then if you go to the second page, I can't really read it, so I can't tell, but it looks like it creates 2 new ballots. And if you go to the third page, it looks like it creates 5 more ballots, and then 6, 7, 8. I mean, we're looking at now, if we have 188 ballots, 225 ballots or something, 220 ballots that this alignment creates for us.
Right, so it makes sense then for us to see if there's a way that we could reduce those by moving some of these lines and some of these rather insignificant distances that would save us printing up another 20 or 30 ballots maybe. So I think we should explore that, and we can check to see what the balance of the contract is, and see if they're interested in doing this work that was following up what they did 10 years ago, I guess. Any other comments or questions you want to continue going?
Sure. So the rest of the maps, I think, are from the first view. You get the gist. There's lines that are colored that Liz has drawn on the maps that shows where split precincts are. Again, like Mr. Constant, I don't know the exact number. I didn't count them all, but it could be about 25. And so that's what the rest of the. It was just our best guess. We're looking at PDF compared to PDF. We didn't have the GIS data to look at parcel lines or numbers or anything like that. So this is just our best guess at how the new precinct boundaries are going to affect our district lines. Beginning on page 7.
Is this where you're going to start the neighborhood part?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pause and then discuss the paragraph that you.
Okay, so the paragraph in the letter, I sort of explained that we didn't have the shape files from the state of Alaska. Their website still, as of yesterday, I didn't check this morning, said that they'll be available for download soon. And so what it does say is it requests that the parcel lines not be divided. We weren't able to do an analysis of that because of the lack of shape files, and we're asking them, while it looks from the maps from 7 to 95, it looks like they are usually following street lines. There are occasions where they are off into land, and we want to be very sure that they are not on crossing parcels, because then we have a situation where we have a precinct, a person, potentially a voter's parcel being divided by a boundary, a precinct boundary, and then we have to figure out which precinct that voter belongs in.
Right, and then if they build an ADU in their backyard, they vote in a separate precinct.
Or worse, a unit lot subdivision.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Imagine that.
I could see that where that could be confusing, to say the least. So did the state, so they expect that they'll have that information available relatively soon, or?
So the deadline for comments is Friday, the 29th. And so I don't think that, even if they put the lines up today, I don't think that we are able to, I don't think we have the time to look at those. So I think the best option at this point to meet their deadline is just to encourage that they take another look at it to make sure that they're not crossing parcel lines, and if they want to work with us, we can certainly help them to find those potential parcel lines.
Well, we'll just have to continue to maintain good communications with them, and I think we need to set up a meeting or something to go through that. I would encourage that. I don't know. I think that's a good idea, Ms. Jones.
Through the chair, this is an opportunity for public comment. I'm not positive that the state can individually meet with us for those discussions. Jamie is asking for your review of this letter, and I think that your comment, the first part of your comment was really good, and I was writing down the MOA elections team is willing to work with the State Division of Elections to confirm or review parcel lines. So I don't think that we can ask them to meet with us, because I don't think we're any different than anyone else from the public that has comments about the new precincts.
Okay. All right.
Though, I don't know, Mr. Chair, if it would hurt to add a line that said, if you provide us the shape files, we will demonstrate for you the split parcels in our jurisdiction.
There we go. That's a good idea, Mr. Constant.
That way, at least we can make sure our parcels are as clean as possible.
That's a way of moving the subject forward and making some progress in that.
So, and there's only one other note that I would add, Mr. Chair, and that's in that second paragraph. We talk about the government's use of neighborhood names and why it's of value. There's nothing in there about the esprit of a neighborhood, the spirit, and how it's actually meaningful to people who vote to be in a precinct that matches the name of where they live. And so we might take it from just our perspective and add just a little phrase about, my Inland View neighbors know they're Inland View, and they voted in Inland View forever. And I imagine trying to take Inland View from them could be quite loud. So I don't know. Just there's
literal and metaphorical.
Yeah, there's a human side to it that's beyond what government's interests are. It's the people's interests being identified.
Right, well, I'm sure there are voters who've been voting in the same precinct for decade after decade, and the precinct has been called the same name for decade after decade, so sometimes change can be good, but not always.
Yeah, this doesn't even get down to the level of what happens when the voting places change at the precinct redrawing process. I can remember the last time I had an elderly in the neighborhood voted in the same place in the school right next to our home for 40 years, even before the current school was built. And then they moved into a church 10 blocks away that she had to walk to. Anyhow, I don't think we can get to that level, but that's what it means to these folks. It's very personal.
Through the chair, I have a sentence that we could add to this paragraph that says, the people's interest and spirit of the neighborhood is important for people to vote in their named neighborhood, especially where the name of the precinct has been the same as the neighborhood for over 20 years. Would it be all right if we added a sentence to that effect?
I wouldn't have a problem with that. That sounds good to me. And what do the members on the phone think about that sentence? Any feedback? I'm not hearing anything. Okay, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think that would be a good idea to add that sentence.
Okay. So, the rest of the maps each map has the name on it. You can see there's now, Ocean View 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, South Anchorage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, I guess I'm just belaboring the point. It doesn't help with feeling neighborhood. It more describes maybe a side of town that they're on. And then it also shows the PDFs of the lines where, for the most part, they're following streets. However, In a few situations, it does come off of streets. Just providing the maps for full transparency for you guys to take a look at. But I think we already have a sentence from the first paragraph that if they provided us with the shape files, we could provide you with potential parcel crosses in our jurisdiction. If you guys are willing to give us the nod of approval to send this letter as comments from the elections team, I would say that in the letter that with your approval we're sending these comments.
All right. Well, do I hear a motion for the committee to approve this letter?
I'll move that.
Is there a second from someone online on the phone?
Second, Suzanne.
Okay, it's been seconded by Ms. LaFrance. Any opposition to sending this letter? Not hearing any, the committee recommends that you send that letter.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended. As amended. So, Ms. Jones?
Through the chair, I have one question. I was talking to Amy, so I'm not sure I missed it. One of my other suggestions, I know we offered in the letter to assist them. Is that right? We did an offer to assist, right? Is there any way that we would consider doing an appendix? I mean, I know it's due on Friday that says we suggest the following names, or could we provide an example or two?
Sure.
Okay. I'm just wondering if anyone thinks that would be helpful to the state, because I recognize for the state this is much easier. Ocean View number 1, Ocean View number 2. This is easier for them. But I would like to let you know why this is difficult for us. Jamie mentions this when she talks about reviewing tables in the creation of the election databases and verifying the number of voters. What happens is, when you get a database, the files are not going to be, sometimes the columns are smaller than the full name of that field. So the bottom line is we're going to have Ocean View, Ocean View, Ocean View, Ocean View, and you're going to have to make the file, the column larger to see Ocean View 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, you're going to have to drill down into that to remember which one really is Ocean View 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we enter data. We know the number of registered voters in Ocean View 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're entering that data. Well, if you're reading Ocean View 1, 100 voters, Ocean View 2, 100, and you get off a line, you're going to be entering the wrong data, because it's so much the same. And that's another reason why, for our accuracy, we really think these old neighborhood precinct names are really important. We just want to make sure that we get the spirit of the neighborhood. We think that's important too, but it's also going to improve our accuracy for our elections.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that this second or third paragraph really does detail out, for the most part, the government's value. Adding that is fine, right? Just the efficiency of data entry based on some nomenclatures.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for the most part, this is on what's valuable to the implementation of an election.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Okay. Any comments from members on the phone? Any questions before we move on to the next item?
I would just add, if I might, please, that
Mr. Constant?
when we have the final letter, please share it with the members, the whole body.
All right, we'll take a look at this letter. And this, we need to send it out here before the end of the week. Is that what the plan is?
For the chair, the deadline is Friday the 29th, so we'll get it wrapped up and get the letter sent to you and then get the letter sent to the division.
Okay, fantastic, sounds good. And we've been joined in person by Ms. Quinn Davidson. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions or comments about new business. I don't know if we have any, does anyone have any old business that they would like to discuss right now? We have a few minutes left in our meeting time. Not seeing anything. I guess we can go to audience participation. Is anyone on the phone or in person that would like to participate? If you're on the phone, I'd leave to unmute at *6. And you'd have 3 minutes to make a comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. What's your name and what part of town do you live in?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Louis Imbriani from Eagle River. I just wanted to call and address the committee and ask that when you do review Title 28, which I'm sure you will, that you look into moving when we hold municipal elections. Currently they're being held in April, but I believe that they should be held in November. The reason is purely objective and purely statistical. If you look at the turnout that we've had over the past municipal elections, 2020, 2021, and 2022, all three were conducted via mail, and we saw anywhere from 70,000 to 75,000, with the exception of the May 11, 2021 runoff, where we saw 90,000 participants. This is 90,000 participants when that ballot is mailed directly to someone. However, if you look at the general election results from 2020 and the state general election results from 2018, both of which were held in November, you see 110,000 participants in 2018 and 140,000 participants in 2022. That is a large discrepancy in voter turnout. That seems solely based on time and issue. So by combining our election to the same time that these are happening, we can get a higher turnout. I think it is all of our goal to have our elections be accessible, fair, and easily accessible. And by combining the way the state does it with the way that we do it, that can be done. So I'd ask the committee to look into changing it so you get a higher voter turnout. I believe that's the goal. Why are we mailing out all of these ballots if we're not having that type of engagement? We need the same type of engagement. And if we move it to the same time, and we do it within a relatively same manner, we can get that engagement. Because 140,000 voices is far more than 75,411, which we saw for the mayoral election. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Imbriani. I think Ms. Quinn Davidson has a question for you.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Imbriani. Thanks for the suggestion. I was just wondering, are you suggesting that we no longer do vote by mail and just have everything in person with the state's election? Because the state, of course, operates their elections separately. Or what can you talk to me about the logistics of what you're suggesting?
Yeah, so the logistics would be very similar to kind of what the state has in place. If we're offering a vote by mail system here at the municipality, then we should be looking into combining our technology. So the state has the My Alaska, where somebody can go on and do that. There, they can request an absentee ballot, or they can go there to the election office and request an absentee ballot. So that allows people who want to vote in person to vote in person, and those who want to vote by mail to vote by mail.
Okay.
So you allow people to vote how they want in a secure manner.
Okay, that's helpful. So you're suggesting getting rid of our vote by mail system and just using the state system, which of course our current system also allows people to vote in person or by mail, just for the record. But I think I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn-Davidson. Thank you, Mr. Imbriani. Anyone else online that would like to participate or that's here in person that would like to make a comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Susan Riley, Campbell Park Community Council. I just would like to commend the committee for addressing those little slivers on the precinct maps, because as a poll worker and as a voter who's voted in one of those precincts, has had the same name for 40 years, there is confusion when you make changes like this, and especially if they're not consequential. I mean, if you can make the numbers work to keep those precincts all in one district, it's very helpful. Plus, there's cost associated with all of those ballot styles too, so it adds up. So thank you for addressing it. We'll see what happens.
Great. Well, thank you. Any additional comments from members on the phone?
Yes, please.
Okay, introduce yourself. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Veronica Lamberson, and I would like to concur with Louis Ambriani about what he said, and I would like to add to it that not only in person and meeting up with the state already system, that we also use a connection of cleaning up the voter polls and use one system to do both, and a preference that we have voter ID also included.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other comments from anyone on the phone or in person? Not hearing from anyone, we are down to adjournment. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Constant, and we are adjourned.